Hi everyone, welcome back to CSharpCorner live show. I'm your host Stephen Simon, and once again I'm back with another episode of CSharpCorner MVP show. One of the shows I really like to host, where I go ahead and invite community leaders who contribute their time apart from their job and contribute to the community. It's a pretty exciting show that I really love it. And welcome everyone. For those who are joining us for the very first time, we do these live shows every day at 10 a.m. Eastern. And in fact, we do so many live shows that I like to call it that we stream 8 days in a week. All right. So just quick reminders before I go ahead and get started about the different shows that we do. On Monday, we do Azure AI show at 10 a.m. Eastern, all times, where we talk about the different offerings and different services that Microsoft provides on Azure. Pretty cool thing. Then on Tuesdays, we have a product showcase and coffee with pros, where we do kind of video podcast, chit chat with community leaders or product managers, sometimes at Microsoft and any other guests too. And on the same day, we sometimes also have product showcase where we focus on one particular product and talk about it. The other day, we had guys from Code Factory and we did a great show. Don't forget to check that out too. Then on Wednesday, as it is today, we do C Sharp MVP show. I did mention about what this show is, and today we have a very interesting guest, and I'm really excited to host her. Okay. Then on Thursdays, we have Ask Me Anything. We are at episode number 30 now. It's one of the most popular shows that we run. You can go ahead and ask any questions to your speakers. They do some technical sessions. We do chit chat and a lot of fun in those episodes too. Then on Friday, we have Growth Mindset. That's by Mahesh, who is the founder of C Corner. Where he tells you how to go ahead and grow in your career and just stop coding for a long while. I mean, you shouldn't code for a long while, right? At some day you should stop coding and lead a team. Then on Saturdays, we do Rock in the Code World with .NET Day, where David brings speakers from the .NET ecosystems, and what an amazing lineup he has brought in. Scott Hunter, Matt Stodgerson, Kendra Heavens, Caitlin Dollard, and whatnot. So definitely those are the shows that we run at C Corner. And apart from that, we also do virtual conferences and as I say, 8 days in a week. So for talking about today, for today's MVP show, we have Menaka. Unfortunately, I just cannot say her last name, so I'm just going to avoid that. Menaka is a senior program manager. She is a tech speaker, and in fact, she is very active in the community. You can often find her speaking in virtual events these days. She has been active even when things were normal in the offline events. She's a Microsoft certified professional. She's an author, blogger. She loves to write, and she loves all about Azure and .NET Core. And guess what? She's also she has been a Microsoft student partner, and I just love hosting people who come from that background because that program was so amazing. But before I do that, I just quickly want to show ahead that why I'm really excited because main guy is a superstar, and just go ahead and see she has been a featured speaker in the .NET conference with Leslie and Scott Hanselman, who I think I'm looking at the next big superstar in the .NET community. All right, having said that, let me go ahead and invite Menaka. Hi Menaka, welcome to the live show.
Yeah, hello Samya. How are you?
I'm doing good. Thank you, Menaka. Thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate for accepting the invitation and looking at your profile, Menaka. I quickly want to talk about the community stuff that you do and how did you get into it and how did you come to know about C Sharp Corner at the first place?
Yes, I started writing blogs from my third year of engineering in
Mm-hmm.
CSharpCorner. I still remember the days how I started writing, and from Mahesh and from all of the community members, I got a great support. Whenever I'm writing my first article, even there will be a lot of mistake, there was a lot of correction. These people helps me a lot. And from the start to nowadays, I have written around 50 plus articles in CSharpCorner with
Wow,
two future articles. So with 1 million readers. So that is where I
really?
started. Until now, I'm doing community activities.
That's great. I mean, 1 million reads. Let me go ahead and check it out. All right, it's exactly the way. It's 1.4 million. I mean, you have reached so many people with over like 47 articles, some forums. A couple of them are featured. So definitely,
Yes.
Menika. Quick question, Menika. How do you get time? I say you work full time, right? So you work in an organization. You did start from the college, but how do you get time, and when do you do write these articles?
Mostly writing the article which is related to the skill what we are working is quite easy. Whenever we are going with
Hmm.
some other skill, then it could be hard. So I usually write on what I work, what are the research I will do daily day-to-day activities. So that's how I manage my time with writing articles, being a professional.
Wow, that definitely makes sense. I mean, you are working on it full time. You're working on projects, client project. If you find any problem over there, you have been struggling. So what you do, you go back home and you try to write an article, and then you share with the community. That's amazing, Menika.
Mm.
So looking at today's topics, looks like we're gonna talk about. I forgot the topic. Okay, I'm not an Azure expert. It says top essential skills for Microsoft Azure Administrator. So what is it? I mean, I know you have slides and demos. A quick thing that what we're gonna talk about in today's live show.
Yes, actually, what we are going to do, see on today's session is about essential skills for Azure Administrator. For the
Hmm.
past, I have been delivering sessions in various Azure related things. I will have a question at the end of every session like, do I really need a coding stuff to work on Azure? What
Yeah.
category I can work? I been from admin end. So to make it clear, today I just want to have this as a show to make what are the skills need to possess for admin end. So that is what I took this topic today in today's
So,
session.
sounds pretty interesting. I mean, you raised the fact that you really need coding to go ahead and work on Azure, because Azure is like everything, right? Anyone can go ahead and get started with Azure, and in fact, yeah, they have an amazing product in the Microsoft lineup that are Power Apps, where you don't really even need to code to go ahead and build applications and mobile apps. So definitely,
Yes.
really excited for that, Manika, and I think you can go ahead and start to share a screen, and then I'll put it into the live stream.
Yes.
and for, and
Let
for
me
all the
share.
guys who are watching, feel free to drop any questions in the comments, and we will make sure that we answer that towards the end of the session. It doesn't have to be technical. It can be anything that you want to ask to Menika. So Menika, I see your screen. I'm going to add it to the stream right now.
Yes.
And
Yes.
perfect. You can start next 35 40 minutes. It's 25 minutes is all yours.
Yes. So today's session is all about essential skills for a Microsoft Azure administrator. As I said before, like why I took this topic is to mainly differentiate the roles and responsibility performed by a developer as well as an administrator. So many sessions at the end, people will come up with a common query like I should be a development developer or I should be a tester to get into the Azure, or I'm from a different stream, I'm from a SAP end, I just want to get into Azure. Is it possible for me? Can I adapt to this technology? To make this clear, I took this topic as my session title. So, what are the skills that is required for Azure Administrator? So, if you go into the Azure Admin end, there are a lot of services available in a compute end, storage end, as well as a security end. So, getting into each and every services is like okay, getting into the particular technology depth. So I took some of the technology, some of the services that can easily adaptable and easily get into the today's trend and scenarios. So that is what I'm going to discuss in further upcoming slides. So let's get into the session. So before that, I'm Menaka Baskarpillai. I'm currently working as a senior programmer with Azure and .NET certified professional, along with a blogger. You can find my blogs in my CSharp profile, as well as for any doubts and clarification, you can reach out me via my Twitter or LinkedIn. So today's agenda, what all are the roles and responsibility of Azure admins? So in virtual machine, if I go with the traditional approach of creating a virtual machine, managing the virtual machine and monitoring the virtual machine, then it could be a very basic stuff. So in virtual machine as a compute, what is a today's trend? I took Hyper-V virtual machine, and in a security end, how we can able to adapt the security as an admin, how I can able to monitor and maintain the security by means of network security group in AD as in another end. So I took this both topic. Along with Azure storage, the storage topic is quite vast. Even if you are a developer also, if you need to adapt a particular storage, for example Cosmos DB or a blob, I need to go into the particular storage and I need to get a depth knowledge. Then only I can able to easily adapt to particular service. But in Azure Admin, you don't need to invest that much time as a developer to get into the particular service. You can easily manage your storage container by means of Azure portal itself. So I took Azure storage as one topic. At last, Azure data lake, because nowadays the machine learning algorithms, all other algorithms are mainly depend on data lake and training the models. So to make this particular topic into highlight, I took the data lake storage also one of the topic of today's discussion, to make it like what is today's trend in data lake, how machine learning algorithm are getting processed, and what are the roles as admin you can perform in the data lake. So all together what we are going to see in today's session. So first let's get into roles and responsibility of Azure admin. As a developer, for example I'm a developer, I just want to create a virtual machine so that I can able to adapt my user to the client environment. So developer usually write a PowerShell script or CLI, or he can use the Azure portal to create a virtual machine. I am a admin. What are the action I can perform on the particular virtual machine? At first, number one, I can able to maintain and monitor the particular virtual machine. Not only virtual machine, you can able to do the same in your app service also by integrating with the Azure Monitor or application inside. In second thing, for example, I want to auto scale, or I want to make my CPU to in quite bigger size, or I just want to make the particular IP address to connect with my virtual machine. These all are the roles I can perform in the virtual machine. So this is how what admin can perform in a Azure virtual machine. Not only in Azure virtual machine, with other services also this will be quite adaptable. For example, some service will have auto scaling feature to be get adapted based on the number of pods availability, because whenever there is no user, I don't want my service to available for everyone. So I need to reduce the number of pods, and sometime whenever there is large number of requests, I just need to increase the number of pods. To perform this auto scale, writing the scale rule condition, all this activity can be performed from the admin end. So this is in the compute stage. What all are the roles I can perform in the storage end as well as in a security end, we can discuss in the next upcoming slide. So commonly the cloud administrator manages the cloud services that span storage, networking and cloud capabilities. So compute, storage, network and security, all these four category, the person who maintain and monitor the particular functionality, how the particular services behaves, these all are the roles performed by Azure administrator. So here the writing of code or performing a scripts action are very lesser. Every action can be taken from your Azure portal in itself. So there is very lesser chance of writing the scripts or CLIs or any things that belongs to the development activity. For a new application, whenever we are doing a migration activity, for example from my on premise to a cloud, I'm doing some migration activity. So I just want to make sure the particular environment is getting adapted to the present application. Simple example is I'm just want to migrate my CQL DB to cloud. So as an admin, they are asking me what all are the futures, what all are the cost ways I can able to perform this action in my Azure or any other cloud service provider. So as an admin, I can discuss that in a Cosmos DB there is an API available specially for a CQL. So this makes the migration work easier. From the throughput and latency, we can able to produce this much cost for this much storage. I can able to identify. So all these practices can be done from the Azure admin end in a storage. So for a migration or creating any new application, to make it optimal for its performance, to make it works good for the particular stability, all those activity can be done from the Azure admin end. So cloud administrator mostly use the Azure portal, then later PowerShell and command line interface. This is what I want to stress here. We will use a Azure portal as a major endpoint. We will very lessly use the PowerShell as well as the CLI for performing activity. As I said before, it is the work of the developer to create a virtual machine. In very rare cases, the admin also will do that, but from Azure portal rather by creating by means of CLI or from the PowerShell. So good experience on operating system, virtualization, cloud infrastructure, storage structure and networking. These all are the characteristics characteristics features of the Azure admin. So those one who have very good background from the managing the operating system or infrastructure or from managing the storage environment, these all are the people who can able to adapt to the Azure administration roles and responsibility very easily. So these all are the basic stuff that the Azure admin need to carry. So getting into the topic of virtual machine, as I said before, creating a virtual machine, maintaining and monitoring, all those stuffs will be a very basic stuff which we can able to perform from a Azure portal itself. Based on the requirement, I can able to add the CPU size, I can able to reduce the all other dependency based on the requirement. But what is a trend? Because for a technology, today's trend is very important. The standards and other common future which makes the particular technology to adapt for everyone is the main reason when we are getting into any service. So what is today's trend? Like Hyper-V virtual machine, this is quite new as well as quite interesting one, which is adapted by me in recent. So I may know like this is very quite easy to work also, because whenever we are doing with the virtual machine process, the client will require some type of operating system to work on that. After some few time, he will say like I just need the same application to run on some other virtual some other environment. For example, operating system Linux, Windows, it rapidly they will change based on the dependency. So in that cases, I feel this Hyper-V virtual machine is very helpful, because it lets you have multiple operating system as a virtual machine on your Windows. So you can able to adapt any kind of operating system that works on your window. So it will provide you a hardware virtualization also. So that is one of the key feature which you can adapt easily. The main and important reason of Hyper-V virtual machine is you can able to create a hard drives as well as virtual switches and all other things that need for a virtual device inside your virtual machine. So you don't need to add any other services to make your virtual machine to work together with your drives or with switches or any other capabilities. Everything can be adapted easily by means of Hyper-V virtual machine. So this is how Hyper-V virtual machines looks like. So whenever your client asks you to change the OS and test your app, you can easily do that by means of adapting it to the Hyper-V virtual machine. As I said before, this you don't need to create from your PowerShell or from a CLI. From Azure portal, you can able to create it easily, and you can able to span it according to your client requirements. So the reason to use a virtualization is it run your software that requires an older version of Windows. For example, I just having my application that run on my older version of Windows. So it is impossible for me to change my Windows OS and then adapt to that to my application for a single application. By means of this virtualization, I can able to do that easier. So at the same time, for a non-Windows operating system also, as I said before, if it is a Linux or some other operating system, changing it completely on my Windows is quite hard for me and it will take a lot of time. So instead of that, I can able to perform this activity by means of Hyper-V. So experiment with other operating system. Hyper-V makes it very easy to create and remove different operating system. So adding as well as removing is quite easier, and the time consumption is also very lesser. So with Hyper-V, you can run them all on a single desktop or a laptop computer. So this is one of the important point. You can perform every action on your single desktop as well as your laptop. So these virtual machine can export it and then import it into any other Hyper-V system, including Azure. So you can able to perform the task as a separate one, or you can able to incorporate that in your Azure services also. That is one of the important feature of this Hyper-V virtualization. So in virtual machines, the concept that is in today's trend is Hyper-V concept. So adapting Hyper-V make us to work easier in all other aspects, as I mentioned in these points. So this is one of the main and important service that need to be known by the Azure admins who works on the compute part, especially in a virtual machine. So what are the system requirement that you need for adapting this Hyper-V is, it will be available on a 64-bit versions of Windows 10 Pro, Enterprise as well as in education. It is not available on a home edition. It will run one or more virtual machine on a computer with a 4 GB of RAM, so it is sufficient. So you need to have a valid license for an operating system you use in the VM. Usually for a VM, we need to have a valid license. So as like that, you need to have the valid license for using this Hyper-V also. So this is one of the requirement that needed for the Hyper-V. So next, getting into the Azure Active Directory. So after a virtual machine, the major endpoint where the Azure Administrator will work is Azure Active Directory. So why this Azure Active Directory is quite important service being Azure Admin, which I will discuss in further slide. So what all are the things we are going to see here is what about Azure Active Directory? What all are the concept associated with that? What is AD join? As well as self-service password reset, that is SSPR. So this is all we are going to discuss in this security concept. So Active Directory. So before I have a set of rules and condition for my on-premise to get access. So when it is getting into my cloud, what all are the things I can able to perform? For example, I can give you a simple example. Giving an Office 365 account access makes me to work on all my organizational things like including my SharePoint site, Teams, Outlook. So how they are performing this activity from the cloud end. So these all are the features that been adapted from the Azure Active Directory. So it enable you to securely manage access to Azure services and resources for your user. So it will include the SaaS application also. So don't forget the SaaS application. It will include the SaaS application also. So it provide application management by means of authentication, as well as it have the device management also, which is adaptable to the hybrid environment. So this is a normal diagram which describes how we can able to access the cloud services by means of Active Directory, by means of authentication, by using OpenID Connect or authentication with the WS Federation, as well as a SAML authentication. So the same action will be performed in my on-premise also, where we use a Windows Server Active Directory with a normal authentication with Kibros. So those are the things that will comes under the Active Directory. So what is the role of admin for using the particular services? So that is main. This services is quite commonly used by admin because here as a developer and we will have not that much activity to perform in this particular services. So providing the access and making the particular organization features to available for particular user and adding the particular user to particular tenant ID, all this activity will be performed by the administrator. So this is one of the special services that is meant only for administrator. In some cases developer will also work on this service. So the AD concept which will include the following key points, which include the identity, account, Azure AD tenant, as well as the subscription. So application which you need to authenticate will comes under the identity, the account, the data associated with the particular app, with the directory or the tenant. This is this is where you will give or add your resource. This is like a club. A tenant is automatically created when your organization signs up for your Microsoft Cloud subscription. So this is the instance of AD in short while, and as well as a subscription. This is a paying option for your cloud service. So the daily join, as I said before, what is new in this particular service? Like this is something like I can what all are the services I'm saying new, that is not in means of recent time it getting originated. It is already there, but the visibility is very lesser. In that concept, I'm telling that it's new. So the daily join is one of the beautiful thing, like a single sign on to your Azure managed SaaS apps and service. So by means of single authentication, you can able to log in on multiple things for your organization. That is like AD join. So restriction of access to apps only from the complaint devices. That is also one of the future. Seamless access to on-premise resource. So the AD join is based on the cloud-first approach, as well as it works on the hybrid environment. You can work with the on-premise environment also. So this is one of the thing. And SSPR, so it will determine who can use the self-service you have created. So that is why they named as a self-service password reset. So you can choose the number of authentication methods required as well as the methods available. You can able to do this action by means of email, phone, questions, any kind of authentication you can able to use. You can require user to register the same as like the multi-factor authentication. Many cases we will use VPN, same like that you can able to use in your SSPR also. So this is one of this. So in next coming to the network security group, so NST, what we are going to discuss is NST filters. So this is one of the quite good service for admin to adapt whenever they are working in the virtual machine, because I can able to manage my inbound and outbound traffic by means of network security group. So this is one of the important service also that need to adapt for who the people who works both on the security end as well as in the admin end. It is constructed based on the security rules which allow or deny your inbound traffic to or fro from your Azure. So all network security group contain a set of default rule. You cannot delete the default rule, but since they are assigned with the lowest priority, you can ignore it. For example, this concept is like I want my virtual machine to get connect from my Windows, but I'm creating two virtual machines. For a one virtual machine, I want it to connect from my Windows normal personal lab. Another virtual machine which should not be connect from my Windows, that is my personal lab. But the second virtual machine which I am created need to be connected from the first virtual machine which I have already created. So I can able to write or set the rules for my requirement. So that is how the network security group works. So the things what all are the rules it will follow, like the name should be unique within the NSG and the priority should be 100 to 4096. Number will low number will have high priority. So if you are setting some rules, set the rules based on the priority number. If you give 100 and then you set the rule, then the 100 rule will have the high priority. The source and destination, it is your IP address, and the protocol, it is a TCP or UDP, as well as the direction, either it's an inbound network or outbound, as well as the port range and action to perform, like allow the particular or deny the particular. So these are all the actions that need to be performed in our rule section. So what is a virtual network? It's a fundamental building block for your private network in Azure. So Azure resources securely communicate with each other within the Azure internet as well as in your on-premise environment. So the filtering the activities or filter network traffic will be performed by means of network security group as well as a network virtual appliances. So all these features will be work and it will be a adaptable technology to those who works in the security end of the cloud as well as for the people who've been an admin end also whenever they are working in the virtual machine. So there is some of the limitation also, because while adapting particular services, even though it is quite easy to adapt as well as a user friendly also, but there is some limitation. So it has some limitation where you have the network interface codes for 65,536 and other, like you can write the rules per NST for 1000 only, you cannot exit more other than that, and you have only limited virtual network support also. Anyway, it is sufficient to go for a particular virtual machine. So subnets per virtual network also 3000, as well as the public IP address you can able to access is 10. So these are the limitations. So services that can be deployed into the virtual network. So as I said before, you can adapt this network group not only to the compute part of virtual machine. You can able to do this in your network area for application gateway as well as in Azure firewall. In a data end, you can use this in Redis cache as well as the container end. Defaultly, we need to use for wherever you are using a Azure Kubernetes service, as well as in a web, we can able to use this with a logic app. So all these places we can able to deploy this virtual network into our Azure services. So how NSG works? Usually, if we have the virtual machine, my inbound traffic and outbound traffic will be determined by means of network security group. Usually, this network security group that belongs to the subnet will perform. For example, in the first VM1, the network security group 1 will permit or deny the incoming traffic, and after that network security group, after that network interface will perform the action, and then the virtual machine 1 will take action. So this is how the inbound traffic works. You can able to add the rule to allow or deny the port. Whatever action you can able to perform will purely depend on the first network security group. Once it is done, then it will depend on the network security group. Same thing, if you don't have any network security group 2, then the network security 1 which is associated with the subnet 1 will perform the action in VM2. In next VM3, we don't have a network security 1, so the security 2 along with the interface will perform the action for VM3. If there is no network security group, I have only my network interface, there will not be any distraction. So all my port inbound and outbound traffic will be automated. So next we are getting into the storage concept. This is one of the wonderful service which I like, preferably in all other Azure services, Azure storage, because there are a lot of services to explore in Azure storage. For example, in Cosmos DB, you have around 5 API to support, from the normal SQL API to all other API. Whenever you are doing migration activity, that is very helpful. If we are coming to unstructured data storage, there is a blob storage where you can able to store the all the unstructured data, as well as you can perform all the function grid activities also to make it work accordingly to the request of your client. So all other things you can able to perform in a storage end. But what is the action that can be performed from the admin end? As I said before, for a already existing storage, you can able to monitor the cost consumption as well as the behavior of the storage, the activities of incoming and the deleting files. For example, creating a simple Azure storage and adding the Azure function and monitoring the files getting uploaded and the files getting downloaded and log files which is generated. All the activity can be performed from the Azure admin. So this is a service that you can able to use to store the files, messages, tables, and other information. So it is a durable, secure, scalable, as well as accessible one. So storage for virtual machine, unstructured data and structured data, all this storage are available in Azure services. So it have two tiers. It's a standard HDD as well as premium. This concept belongs to the drive concept. So this is basic all about Azure storage. So what all are the storage criteria I have? Like I can have a containers where I can able to store my files for unstructured data. Separate files concept also there. There is a tables as well as queues. In all these services, the role of admin will be vary. For example, as I said before, if I'm going with the container, I can able to monitor by means of integrating with Azure function. I can able to add some input and output bounding, and I can perform the task. So that could make my work easier as admin end. So files also it will vary, but the steps will be quite similar only. So these are all the services that can be, as Azure admin, we can work on. So data lake storage. So this is a last topic of today's session, which I have told like one of the important topic in today's recent trend. What is the use of a data lake? So what is this data lake? What action as admin I can perform? It is an enterprise-wide hyperscale repository for big data analytic workload. Enables you to capture data of any size and type. It is designed to enable analytics on the stored data, and it is tuned for performance for data analytic scenarios. So it includes all great capabilities that include security, manageability, scalability, reliability, as well as availability. In quite common, what is data lake? For example, you have a data where you don't know what is the exact form or schema of the data. So in these cases, analyzing, storing, performing action on the particular data is quite difficult, because if we know the format of data or how the data is being stored, we can able to use the data for further processing. Whenever we are performing a machine learning or any other activity for a cognitive service, we need to train a model. We cannot train a model based on the data that is available for 10 days or 20 days. For example, I'm creating a prediction analysis. I want to train my model. I want to store the data for training the model. I want the data from various sources to get accumulated. In these cases, if the data have no form or structure or any other idea about the data, I don't have any other idea about data, I cannot able to use the data for my further processing. Because for training a model, I need to have the data which is for a decade based on the requirement. So long-term storage of data as well as without the form, the processing the data is quite difficult. So all these demerits can be rectified by means of data lake storage. So you can able to store it or capture the data of any size as well as any type. So this is how data lake storage works. First, we need to ingest as well as then we need to prepare, and then we need to store as well as at the end we need to analyze. So this is a process. In native format, we need to get the raw data. So there is the point where as an admin we will work, because the data will be in a different format. For admin, it will be quite difficult for us to differentiate the data, and then for example, even it is a thousands or 10,000s of data, it's quite common to accumulate the data. But if it is more than a decade of data, then the size, think about the size of data as well as the format of data. It is quite hard for us to determine the capabilities of data. So in just in the native format is quite easy by means of Azure Data Lake Storage. And preparing, for example, annotating, separating or enriching the particular data based on the schema. Once after having the raw data, preparing the data is quite easy with the data lake. After that, after preparing and separating, after annotating all this action, we need to store the data for further analysis. Cannot say like storing the data today and using the data tomorrow, as like using the hot and cold tire in blob, I can use the same like that. We cannot say that concept in data lake storage. We need to store the data maybe for a years or for decades, because the data which is getting today may be used after 10 decade also. So we cannot able to do for a short term. So storing also very harder in nowadays of data concept. So storing data is another one. And after that, analyzing the data. So we have lot of tools that need to analyze the data. For example, those who are working in a Hadoop, Splunk and Spark environment, they know how to analyze the data. This data is not only used for this purpose with other tools like Hadoop or Spark or Splunk environment. Even this data may be used in further analysis. For example, in cognitive service, they are having a inbuilt API. How this API are getting generated? These APIs are getting generated based on the trained models. Where the trained models been obtained, these models are being trained from the data which is already available. So getting the data, storing the data, optimizing the data and performing tasks, all this need a lot of effort. So these actions being performed easier by means of Azure Data Lake Storage. So this is one of the important services that need to adapt. So securing data in data lake, we can use area authentication as well as authorization, access control authorization, as well as you can encrypt the data also. So authentication with Azure Data Lake, as usual, what we use to authenticate is like end user authentication with credential. Service to service authentication is one of the new thing that we can adapt in Data Lake services. Like use this if you have an API need to access the data lake without user intervention. For example, I have an application. From my application, I have an API. From that API call, my data will get accessed. For this cases, I don't have a direct authentication to the particular data. So I need to do by means of API authentication. So that activity can be performed by means of service to service authentication. So access control in Azure Data Lake Storage, you can manage the access control. You can do from a folder level, file level, because everywhere data, because in Azure all services, the compliance, they made lot of certificates. So you can able to add the security level from a folder, file level, everywhere, what type you want for your particular data. So there are three permission as like usual data storage: read, write and execute, as like your Cosmos. And then permission for an item or stored on the item itself. In other words, permission for an item cannot be inherited from the parent item. Usually in storage, after creating a folder and setting some of the security levels, we can inherit the folder and then we can create the child folder, and we can inherit all the property of the parent folder. But that is not possible here, because you need to reset everything for a individual files as well as folder based on your requirement. There is nothing like inheritance from the parent folders. So I hope today's session, all this club together from the compute, storage, networking, security, all this together, I have concluded this session. For any doubts, we can have doubt discussion now.
Wow, Menaka, that was a very clear and crisp presentations, and I really love that you covered almost the entire ecosystem of the Azure Administrator and what are the major crux one should go ahead. And if someone is willing to go ahead and get started, we have a couple of questions. I'm gonna put it on the screen that we have. It says, "Is it possible to host the VM in another region and connect to different region? Is it possible?"
Once you created the VM with any with a
Hmm.
certain proficiency, you can able to perform this action, because everything as admin, you as admin and you can able to do that activities. So if you
Okay.
are a user, you can request your admin and you can able to process that.
Okay, makes sense. Makes sense. Okay. Well, and the second question that only have is if a customer has production dev and test environment, how to implement a solution that each environment can connect to each other. I mean, is there any way we can do it? Because sometimes people have different environments, and maybe they want to go ahead and maybe sync few things. Is it possible?
Yes. Yes, you have API gateways, Azure API gateways, and you can able to set up as like a normal Oslet JSON gateways. You can able to set up the upstream and downstream, and how what are the environments you want to connect, and what are the environment you want to restrict, and so all this activity can be performed by means of APIM management.
Okay, I hope that this answers to the question who was asked. A quick question, Monica. You did at the very first place, you did set up the stage where you clearly said that usually the administrator work more on the Azure portal, and then comes the PowerShell and CLI,
Yes.
right? So, and you did also give an example of the moving from on premises to the SQL database. I
Yes.
want to know that when more scenarios one would go ahead and use PowerShell or CLI. I mean, that is one example. I mean, in a day-to-day life, how often an administrator would use CLI and PowerShell?
As the first question you asked, like you asked me to do in the different region. In this
Hmm.
case, we need to do with the CLI because we need
Okay.
to change or alter the region. So for that, we cannot able to perform directly from your Azure portal.
Hmm.
So that will require your CLI command to get executed based on the region, and you need to alert the other availability things, everything from your CLI or PowerShell commands. So
Hmm.
that is based on any changes with the actual thing. For a normal live things we can able to do for any changes, for any functionality which is not available in portal. For example, some of the functions will be directly automated from the portal end. Some you need to write a code, so very rare cases.
Okay. I'm happy about that. Now here's a quick question that is for like channel people, right? For since it was an introductory session, but where you also went on to go ahead and talk in depth about some of the services. Monica,
Yes.
who can go ahead and try to be an Azure administrator? Is it going to be a fresher, or is it going to be someone who is already working on Azure? So what should be the background, and who's the ideal person to go ahead and get started with the Azure Administrator thing?
Yes, actually, as I said, those who are working in the infrastructure as well as the operating systems, the one who already have experience with the Windows Server or any other OS, so that is very easy for them to adapt to Azure. They what all are they performing in on-premise, they are going to perform the same in the Azure environment. For a fresher or from the experience from the other fields, Azure administration is quite easy when they are performing very small tasks. For example, what are I'm saying like Hyper-V and all, it's an in-depth concept. For a simple VM, I just need to create and I want to learn. From a learning objective, the admin work is very easy. I can perform from the portal. As a professional, it need a skill that need to support to further growth. For example, the infrastructure management is not easy if you are not experienced one.
Yeah, yeah. But that definitely makes sense. I mean, if someone wants to go ahead and get started, they can definitely go ahead and do it. And when you go ahead and join the team, they're definitely seniors who's going to help you out with the migration and all that task. So if you want,
Yes,
you can go ahead
yes, yes.
and read the documentation. Microsoft has good documentation. And also I see Microsoft has an AZ4104 certifications where you can also go ahead and do that. They have Microsoft Learn platform where they put on amazing content. So if someone wants to go ahead and get started, maybe an Azure fundamental certification or Azure, not if not certification, maybe just the course you can do it, and maybe you can go ahead and get started with it. And if you join in any of the organization or a full time with that, maybe you can go ahead and learn more things a lot. I hope I was able to get what you said. So Minka, I think we're almost at time. We're at almost like 40 minutes. Anything you want to share? Any last words? Anything you want to share with us? Then we'll just wrap it up.
Yes, as you said, like a lot of documentations available. Even we are working who are working in on-premise. It's quite easy from 900 to 104, 204 based on the skills what they are
Mhm.
working. So that's quite easy for us to adapt to any of the Azure services. So
Mhm.
that's what my last words in today's session. Thank
All
you.
right. All right, Menika, thank you so much. That was a really nice session. I enjoyed listening it, and guess what? I'm definitely gonna take this exam because you really got me excited because this is something that I believe everyone should actually know because this is very fundamental and gives you a very good overview of the different services that Azure provides. So thank you so much for your time, Menika. We really appreciate for all that you do for the community. And I, Stephen Simon, on behalf of entire C Sharp community, would like to thank you, and we would love to have you back in different conferences and live shows that we do. So thank you so much. Until then, I'll keep on reading your articles on C Sharp Corner, and hope to see you soon in next virtual event or maybe in person. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Simon. Thank you, community. Thank you all.
Bye, everyone.